This week, we welcome Katelyn Bowden, CEO of B.A.D.A.S S, battling against demeaning and abusive selfie sharing, to talk about her journey and how she started B.A.D.A.S S. In our second segment, we present you with a technical segment to talk about adventures in AWS computing. I called it that to leave it kind of open-ended because I don't know where it's going to go, but I did a bunch of stuff in AWS. I learned it like on my own without taking.
And we
don't
get to hear
recommend
about it
the way that I did it, but we're going to talk about it. In the security news, Google shares private videos with the wrong users. How to get hacked through a Philips Hue smart bulb in the hub too. Buggy Iowa caucus app is actually buggy. No way. Oh, no way. I gotcha. How U.S. cities have handled their fight against cybercrime attacks and how someone sabotaged their boss with ransomware from the dark web, not recommended. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. NetSparker, the developers of a comprehensive automated web security platform that includes web vulnerability scanning, assessment, and management. NetSparker's desktop and cloud-based security solutions employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities and provides a proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at securityweekly.com/NetSparker. The biggest problem in security that remains unsolved is flat networks inside the cloud and data center that allow threats to move laterally and compromise vulnerable targets. But microsegmentation using traditional firewalls is too complex and time-consuming. There's a better approach. Edgewise Zero Trust Auto Segmentation. Edgewise is impossibly simple microsegmentation. Using the identity of machines and software that are communicating, Edgewise offers the strongest protection that adapts automatically to changes. Protect any application in any cloud without any changes to your network by visiting securityweekly.com/Edgewise.
Here he is. You know him. You love him, mostly in a platonic way. It's Paul Asadorian.
Welcome to Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 638, recorded on February 6th, 2020, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, where sitting next to me is none other than Mr. Mann, Mr. Jeff Mann.
So good to be here. I feel like I've been here all week.
You have, for
I
the
have
most
been
part.
here all
Yeah,
week.
it's good. It's nice to have you in studio. It's great to be here. Patrick Laverty is here with us.
Yeah, it's good to be back right here in the G-Unit Studios with you guys.
Yes. Now, Patrick, you're still at Rapid 7.
I am, yeah. Still pen testing there. Having fun every single day.
Sweet, sweet. On the lines remotely, Mr. Joff Thayer from Black Hills Information Security is with us. Joff, welcome.
Hello, hello. It is so good to be back. I've had a little bit of an absence. I was in London, I was in California, I was all over the place, but it's good to be back.
Good thing it wasn't an abscess, because that's where we'd be bad. Mr. Tyler Robinson is here with us from an undisclosed location. Tyler, welcome.
Buenos noches, dias, I guess, depending on where you're at. Glad to be here.
Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Lee, welcome.
Good to be here, back in my normal home lair.
Very nice. Quick announcement before we get started. Join us at Infosec World 2020, March 30th through April 1st at Disney's Contemporary Resort. Security Weekly listeners will save 15% off the Infosec World main conference or World Pass. Matt Alderman and I are hosting a container security day, hence the research that I showed Tyler earlier. I was like, I'll get containers into the cloud before the end of March. I swear I will. So if you would like to save 15%, check out our Container Security Day, or if you're a security vendor, schedule an on-site interview with us. Go to securityweekly.com/ISW 2020. Katelyn Bowden is here with us after finding her own intimate photos online without her consent. She discovered that there weren't many resources for those who find themselves victims of this sort of abuse. In response, she started B.A.D.A.S S, a nonprofit dedicated to fighting image abuse through victim empowerment and awareness. Katelyn, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So, Katelyn, your background is not in information security, or if you don't want to talk about your day job, or that's fine. Or if this is your day job, I don't want to pry, but
No, it's okay. I'm pretty much an open book. Well, before this, I was actually a bartender. So not at all information security. Maybe some social engineering, but I had no idea how to do any of the things that I'm doing now with B.A.D.A.S.S. And now it is a full-time job. I mean, and then some.
That's awesome.
That's all I do.
And so are just limited to just pictures or video? Because we talk a lot about revenge porn and also the deep fakes, which look amazing. It's amazing the technology behind it.
It is. They are getting better and better at making them look real. But we do deal with video as well as images. Anything that's out there that is used to humiliate and shame somebody that was shared in the intimacy of a relationship or is just being shared without their consent, we help fight it.
Well, and there's also two ways that gets created, both with consent and without consent. But I think for your organization, that doesn't matter. The consent was it's not going to be shared publicly, right, is the violation.
Yes, consent for creation is not the same as consent for sharing. When you're publicizing something, especially when it was shared with the expectation of privacy, then it is a violation.
How have the various content providers been to work with in terms of what content is taken down? Because we've had our own experiences with our content being taken down without our consent for violation of policy. And also those policies I find are very arbitrary. They are.
A lot of, platforms haven't really updated their TOS to reflect revenge porn. And some of them just kind of like to pretend it doesn't exist, which is really, really frustrating. But mostly the bigger, larger platforms have been amazing about removal. Any of the social media sites have been great, as well as, mainstream porn websites. They're really good about removing things that are there without the consent.
Now, do folks come to you because they've already found something online, or do they also come to you if they suspect that it might be online and they want to complete some kind of search?
They come to me for both. We can't really help if somebody just suspects something. I mean, I'll ask them a series of questions to assess if there's a possibility, and we kind of point them in which directions they should look. But usually it's when somebody finds out their images have been shared. We're also really proactive, and we actually go through the websites dedicated to non-consensual pornography. We find the victims, and we are the ones that let them know, instead of a bunch of creeps. It's much easier to deal with when somebody's there to help from the start than, having to frantically try to find help.
What? Go ahead, Lee.
So can you characterize how long it takes between the time somebody says this has happened and you can get it cleaned up, just to give me a sense? And I know it's probably all over the map, but what does it typically take?
If they have one place where it's been shared, it can take up to, a week or two, depending on the platform. Some take a lot longer. But often it is a lifelong process. We all understand how the internet works. Things don't just go away. The internet never really forgets. So once something is out there, it's kind of in the back of your mind at all times that it could come back.
Right. Yeah. Because obviously the stuff can come back at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But when you know what you're doing and you know that it's something that you can actually fight and do something about and get removed, it's way easier to deal with. So, it just depends on which platform it's hosted on and whether or not we're familiar with it or we have to do a lot of research, but usually sometime within 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
So as you're analyzing some of this stuff, are you leveraging the power of automation or scripts or kind of some of the tools that are being used by law enforcement in order to maybe blur out things or validate age and kind of correlate different data?
We have been a little bit toying around with automation, but mostly we do it by hand. We feel that this is more of something that needs a human touch, and that way they also, when it happens, they have so many questions like, am I able to go to the police? Can we just remove? What is going to happen next? Having somebody that's actually there to help that's a big deal, and that's what makes a difference. We do work closely with law enforcement. We are really careful. Anyone that works with us has been, made aware of what they can and cannot do. And we have been doing a lot of things that have really helped catch a lot of criminals as well.
So
how are you?
Sorry, I just want to go back to the law portion of it. Are there federal and state laws regarding this particular issue?
There aren't. We have been working on a federal law, the SHIELD Act. We've introduced it with Representative Jackie Speer that would criminalize revenge porn across the country and fill in the gaps where the state's laws fall short.
Right. So states some states have different laws on books that
45 now, I believe.
Okay. But I'm assuming they're all slightly different.
Yeah, they're all falling short. Most of these laws have an intent to harm clause in them, which means before somebody can even be charged, we have to be able to prove that they meant to harm the person.
Right.
So
which could be tricky.
So this might be a good time, Katelyn, to tell a little bit about your story and why you're doing this in the first place, because it kind of touches on what Paul was just asking about, I think.
Okay. Well, my story begins, 2.5 years ago. Back in 2017, I got a message on Facebook from an acquaintance letting me know that my pictures are being shared on a website called AnonIB. She didn't specifically say, like, these are your nudes. She just said, these are pictures you probably don't want out there. And the reason she had seen them was because she was a victim as well. I go to this website, and lo and behold, there's pictures that I had taken for an ex there. I immediately contacted said ex, and turns out his phone had been stolen, and I knew that. I just forgot because I was really pissed off at the moment. And we were able to hunt down who did it. They were dumb enough to sign up using a username that they also used on Xbox. And I went to the police. I said, hey, this guy stole my ex's cell phone, posted my pictures online. None of it's consensual. Go arrest him. And they said, well, no, that's not how it works. Turns out totally legal in the state of Ohio for this to happen. I had no recourse whatsoever. I was told the only crime that had been committed was the theft of the phone. So obviously I got even more pissed off. And from there, I, got really obsessive about it. I wanted to know more about how this was happening, why no one was talking about it, and what I could do to fight back. So the first thing I started doing was messaging other victims on AnonIB. I'd find them the same way these creeps do. I'd message them on Facebook, and I'd be like, similar to how my friend messaged me, hey, I'm a victim of this. Do you think that maybe if we all work together, we can maybe do something about it? And all these victims were coming back so just happy to have someone that understood what was happening to them, messaging them. So it ended up growing into this huge thing. It started just, by creating a Facebook group for people that have been victimized this way. And then suddenly we're introducing legislation. We're getting calls from social media platforms asking us to come and give them input on how to deal with this a little bit better. And now we help dozens of victims every day. We've written write-ups on how they can remove their images. We work with legal experts. We work with legislators. We work with police officers, and we educate schools, law enforcement, and anyone else who needs to know about this sort of thing. We've raised a lot of awareness and get really loud. And that's kind of what needed to happen for this to make a difference.
Hey, so I have a question, Katelyn. I think most of us probably hold the stereotype that predominantly females are impacted by this activity. Can you comment on that? How many males are actually approaching you, and whether that stereotype is even true or not?
It is a true stereotype. Technically, it's around 90% of the victims of this are women, but it is a growing trend for men to have this happen as well. Now, the effects of this happening to men are a little bit different. There's not as much stigma surrounding sexuality just in general. So they may not feel the same sort of trauma that a woman does. However, discounting any trauma that anyone is feeling. It is very valid. And the trend is growing, especially with these scammers pretending to be cam girls and convincing men to, get on camera with them. And turns out it is not the person they thought. They've been filming them and now they're being blackmailed. This is a really common scam, and the amount of people that fall for it is insane. And I'm really happy every time men do reach out, because I feel like there's not enough resources that support them when these sorts of things happen to them.
Katelyn, I think it's great that you're working with people when it first happens, right? Because that's when they need the most support. They, like you said, they have lots of questions, especially if they're not, on a higher end of the scale of technologically savvy. But my concern is moving forward. How do you monitor? I'm wondering, like, if celebrities have contracted with companies that can do this sort of monitoring, right? Because every image, every video has some sort of, hash that you could take of it. There's also, machine learning and AI that could conceivably find this if it cropped up again on the internet. In fact, we have very similar things that look for modern malware today, right? We could just apply that to images and video. Do you know of services like this, or considered, partnering with them, or trying to get someone to sponsor this sort of kind of continuing monitoring?
Yes, there are a few different methods that mostly copyright companies are using.
Yep.
Especially big companies like Disney and things like that. I mean, if you upload an image or a video to YouTube and there's a Disney movie playing in the background, Disney knows within like 10 seconds.
Right.
And they're getting that down. And there are companies that do use them, and they're essentially just hash filters. We are working on building a hash filter, as well as we want to try some other things too. We do want to start experimenting with AI and finding better ways to, find these images and just automatically start sending out the copyright notices and DMCAs.
Yeah, certainly it's technology that isn't used by other, industries. Making that available to people either for free or very low cost, right, I think is really the trick, because there's a cost associated with doing this level of monitoring.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these DMCA companies, they can charge a lot a year. And our thing is we never charge victims for our help. We even hook them up with, free legal advice and things like that. One of the other things that we really are interested in doing is trying to create a safer way for people to sext. That would watermark the image, that would, embed things within the EXIF that would make sure that if it is ever shared, it can immediately be traced back to the person who shared it. And that's something that we think is really important as well, not only for people that are just sexting, but we also, feel that sex workers deserve the same kind of privacy that everybody else has. And they shouldn't be having their content be stolen and shared otherwise. So we think that that's something that really needs to happen soon.
It's an interesting problem. We at least I support a free and open internet, of course, that, means people can use it for all types of things, whether legal or moral or not. But when you are working with the larger social media companies, I imagine there's a policy, right, and they have a global presence. But my concern is, like, if it ends up on some random site somewhere, as we all know in the security industry, it's not so easy to go take that site down, and you'll just be playing whack-a-mole for the rest of your life. Have you thought about, like, the problem of how once it gets away from, Google searchers and Facebook and YouTube, like, then what could happen to it once it's still on the internet and much more difficult to find and take down?
We actually have dealt with this quite a bit. Like I said, my pictures were originally shared on a website called Anon.ib. And unless people know about this kind of culture, they're not really going to know what the hell Anon.ib is. Anon.ib was a website dedicated to sharing non-consensual photos. It was divided up into sluts by state. They had threads for every county, every city, even high schools. And this was just a niche platform for people to meet and trade nudes. It's a whole fetish. It's and the non-consensual part is to them the part that is sexy. So they just trade them. Like, I'll give you two of Jennifer that nobody's seen before if you give one of Jessica, things like that. And these are really common. And Anon.ib actually was shut down last year, and they were shut down by the Dutch police. Their servers were seized, and within 2 months, there were copycat sites. There were mirrors, and it's become essentially whack-a-mole. But I feel like, some larger social media companies are doing their jobs of making this information less accessible.
Yeah, certainly that's
Facebook has made it so you can't send direct links to a non-IB on their website. It just automatically will not allow you to send those links. And things like that, like little steps like that can really make a big difference when it comes to how this stuff is being shared.
For sure.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead, Lee.
So it sounds like you're doing a bit of education along the way as well. Can you describe what you're doing to educate users, or is it not just users you're educating?
We're working to educate users, but we're also working to educate all of you highly technical folk about what the users' needs are. And from the perspective of somebody that has had some really awful things happen to them, thanks to a lot of this tech. Because I think there's a big disconnect there. We are working to educate users on, simple ways to keep their accounts safe. We're still explaining to people what 2FA is, or how to create a secure password, or about, password generators and stores. I mean, these are things that people aren't using. They don't even think about it, until something horrible happens. A lot of people don't take security as seriously as they should. That's a big deal. We're also working with, advocates in the domestic violence area. We're working with law enforcement who has no idea about the platforms being used. I held an entire class on the basics of Discord. And it's mind-blowing to me how much of a gap there is when I'm talking to people that are extremely technical to, when I'm talking to people that are just internet users.
So you said you're working a lot with law enforcement. Are you also engaging any of the federal agencies or people that deal with things like child porn, where they have an entire hashtag that can track pictures and blocks of pictures across pretty much the whole internet? Have you guys started to do that reach out program around some of the federal programs or technologies they're using?
We've worked with some smaller federal programs that, work against human trafficking, that sort of thing. We do work a lot with NCMEC. We send a lot of people their way anytime, because a lot of people, when they find out their pictures are out there, they may be adults, but that doesn't say the subject of that picture is. And they're therefore hesitant to go to law enforcement. And we always recommend that they go to NCMEC thanks to that filter. We are trying to work more with the larger federal agencies like the FBI and, other people that are working to keep the internet safer for everybody. But mostly we've been working with just small town police officers and state agencies.
Is there any
So how about the local community? Things like guidance or any of the missing and exploiting children community, where they're starting the CTFs or bringing the community into, bring in the technical people that want to do something good for the community, but don't really have an avenue to start supporting that. Have you started to reach those particular points in which you're expanding?
Yes, definitely. We got really lucky early on, and, I connected with Chris Cox. I can't even talk. Chris Cox of Operation Safe Escape, and he's given us a lot of great advice and, helped me figure out what the heck I'm doing when it came to some things. And we do work with a lot of different local agencies as well. But within the tech community, there have been some amazing orgs that have been doing great work. The immediate ones that spring to mind are Operation Safe Escape, oh my gosh, I can picture their logo in my head, the Innocent Lives Foundation.
Yep.
And there's so many others that are doing some really great things. I love the idea of a CTF for missing and exploited children, and that's something that we are looking into. But the problem is, because all of our stuff is, it's sex-based, we have to be really careful as to how we approach that sort of thing.
And also, have you done any kind of reach out yet to underage kids, like educating high school students about the kind of any kind of this kind of information and what types of things that they can be doing as well?
Oh, absolutely. I go to high schools as much as I possibly can. And I go talk to those kids. Normally my hair is lime green. I had to be all professional and I had to dye it normal. And for some reason, these kids, they're connecting really well with somebody covered in tattoos with lime green hair and, coming in and talking to them and not just sitting there and yelling at them. And I think that's a big difference. I'm not D.A.R.E. I'm not going to sit in there and tell tell a teenager not to do something because that's the fastest way you can get a teenager to do something. But I am going to talk to them about internet safety. I am going to talk to them about what agency means, what consent means, what to do if, your friend shows you a picture of somebody without their consent, as well as, let them know what their legal rights are, especially when it comes to teens. A lot of them don't realize that just by taking a picture of their own body, they can actually be charged with a sex crime because they're producing child pornography. So
the question.
Definitely want to make them aware of that.
So a long time ago, I remember hearing that some of the issues with that start much younger than high school. How far down the age path have you gone in terms of reaching out? I know you've only been at it a couple of years, so don't sell yourself short.
The youngest I've ever gotten to really go in and speak to would be, I'd say 4th, 5th grade, which is about the youngest I've really heard of this sort of thing happening. I'm sure there are many cases where it's much younger. That's a thing that happens, but a majority, that's about where the danger starts. And I mostly just talk to them about agency, consent, red flags for grooming, and basic cybersecurity things. I want them to start learning earlier and earlier about two-factor authentication, how to make secure passwords, how to, not be sharing a ton of information about yourself on the internet.
Katelyn, and we talked about this when we had Chris on the show, and along this topic of talking with children about online safety. My son just started middle school, and basically based on conversations I had with Chris, I'm like, all right, I need to monitor devices. Like, I never have been a big fan of monitoring children's devices, but in the context of this discussion, obviously extremely important. What advice do you have for what types of monitoring software that you might use in the context of the conversation, right? Some of my monitoring is to protect the internet from my son, but also to protect my son from the internet. But I find that the monitoring software really sucks.
I'm not a big fan of the total monitoring software, that are really invading kids' privacy. I think the most important thing when it comes to kids is you kind of want to raise them so that you can trust them. You know that they're going to make some good decisions, but you're right. You do have to protect them you have to protect them from the internet. This is actually really close to home. I have 2 daughters and they're obsessed with Roblox. Okay. They love playing Roblox all the time. And, recently it came out that there are hackers within Roblox that are doing some really awful things. They're creating games that are, they're already hacked. So when a kid goes in there just to play whatever game, they are seeing things they don't need to be seeing. There's adults in there that are making characters that are cyber raping other games or other gamers. And I know that sounds weird, but I don't want my kids to see that. And I actually had to have this talk with them yesterday. Because I told them I don't want it on their cell phones anymore. I would rather them be playing it on a larger screen where we can kind of monitor and see what's happening. And it did not go over well, but I really understand that need to protect your kids from these sorts of things. It's everywhere, it feels like sometimes.
You're raising a great monitoring technique. When my kids were teenagers, they didn't have cell phones, mobile devices. We had a home PC, and it was in the kitchen out in the open. And we monitored just by being around. And, they could generally do what they want. And, of course, their dad worked for an intel agency, so there was a lot of fear that I wasn't executing on. They just didn't know what to expect. So it wasn't a monitoring, it was subject to monitoring at all times.
Yeah, I think when they're younger, I have 3 boys, right? When they're younger, it's easier to, like Caitlin was saying, it's on the TV, right? If you want to play games, you want to watch YouTube, that's fine. I want you to be able to use the internet and learn and have fun, but it's going to be, out in the open where we can kind of keep an eye on that. Now, as your kids get older and you have more kids, that becomes a lot more difficult, right? There's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of, ways they could be downstairs, right? And you're not always downstairs. And then as they get older, my son, oldest son, doesn't only just have a phone, so he can play games and go on Instagram. It's part of his safety now, right? When he goes to junior high, or still call it junior high because I'm old, middle school, he's on the bus maybe going to and from school. One day, even in elementary school, the bus just drove past my house with my son still on it. He had no phone. I'm like, well, he's old enough to know how to use a phone and text, certainly. And he goes to wrestling meets or wherever, or if he's at school, our middle school is gigantic in the town that I live in because the whole town goes to the same middle school. I mean, they can't keep track of every single kid at every single point in time. And sometimes I've called the school and they're like, oh, hold on, we don't know where he is right now. I'm like, what do you mean? He doesn't, I'm like, I texted him, he didn't respond. Oh, they're not supposed to use their phones during school. I'm like, but you literally can't find my son right now. So I'm like, that's it. It's in your bag. Don't violate the rules at school, but you have this phone. Now the question becomes, if creepy people start messaging him on whatever apps that I know he's using, and if I don't have monitoring software, what apps that I don't know that he has, then it become an issue. And that's why Chris was advocating for an open monitoring policy with your children to say, look, I'm going to monitor your stuff, but it's for your safety, and anytime we can get together and talk about it. So unfortunately, that's sometimes the hand that you're dealt.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just like parenting. Every parent's going to have their own way of going about things. That's my personal, I don't like the idea of not allowing my kids privacy, but they also know that anytime if they're acting suspicious or something feels off, I'm going to get their phone and I'm going to look through that. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to ask them any questions like, hey, what is going on here? But I also, I know my kids relatively well, and I know that they do talk to me if somebody's getting creepy. I mean, this is my whole job, is dealing with creepy people all day. They hear me do nothing but talk about this sort of thing.
So I had what might be a dumb question.
Okay.
When it comes to teaching our kids, what's more effective, the parent implementing controls or an independent third party like you setting them down and explaining what's going on, or is it a team project? And I apologize if it's a dumb question.
It's not a dumb question. This is an important topic that a lot of people don't really know how to approach. I think it is a team project. One of the things I always push for, and for parents and for kids, is they're not always going to feel comfortable talking to their parents about things, especially when it comes to, sex or harassment or things like that. And so what I always advocate for is a cool aunt, whether that's, an actual aunt or an uncle, somebody that is an adult that's going to help them make good decisions, but isn't going to punish them. Somebody that they can trust to lead them the right way. Somebody everybody trusts, whether it's the kids and the parents. And I think that it's really important for parents to kind of implement that in their kids' lives. That's just me. That, like I said, these are all just parenting opinions. We're all going to have different ways of doing things. But I think that's something that more kids need. Everyone needs a cool aunt.
So then,
have you seen any technological implementations for those people that may not have family or have that cool aunt? Have you reached out to, say, like Disney Circle, where they were really trying to make a device that's simple to use that helps secure some of this? Obviously, there's ways around it, and there's limitations to that. But have you seen any good implementations of that for those that are not tech savvy or don't have those particular people in their lives?
I haven't seen anything that really immediately strikes me. I know the Disney Circle, they were trying really hard with that, but I'm not quite sure where they're at.
Yeah, their new version really stinks, actually. They somehow made it worse. I don't know how you do that, but I wanted to put the old one back in, and that's more. But I think that's
poisoning. So
It was. It was actually kind of cool how they did it. But I found that the older one, the Circle is better at enforcing time limits, which I'm really not a huge fan of enforcing time limits through software, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that's something that would really work and should probably start happening is more YouTube content geared toward this sort of thing. I don't know about your kids. Mine are obsessed with YouTube. That's all they want to do is sit there and watch YouTube, and they watch a lot of the videos about like advice and things like that and growing up, and they love like comics and people just talking to them, it seems like. Barbie actually had some really great YouTube videos that addressed real issues. And I think that more content creators on that platform could really do a lot when it comes to kids.
I'm curious, does any of this parenting, awareness, monitoring, any of the things we talk about, is there a way to talk to the consumer side of this? You know, the people that are drawn into, you mentioned early on it's a fetish, but I don't know if fetishes you're born with them or you grow into them, but is there a message for people to try to teach them at a young age, these are not cool things to look at, these are not cool things to be involved with, and try if there's a way to sort of nip the consumer side of things in the bud?
Yeah, I mean, when I go to schools, I always want to talk to them about what to do if they see their friend or they see somebody else, doing bad behavior. And we do address, like, what do you do if you see something that is non-consensual, whether you know who sent it to you or not? And what we really want to push, and I think this is really, something that people argue against comprehensive sex ed, but this is something that it would cover even at an early age, is about, agency and what that means, what it means to have agency over one's own body, as well as what consent means. And what is, especially on the internet, where that translates between, asking permission to hug or asking permission to talk or asking permission to DM and things like that. That is something that needs to be taught much earlier.
I'll ask the silly question. In this context, what does agency mean?
Agency means control over one's body, and, being able to give somebody permission. Okay. It means controlling how your body is handled, how your body is, any of that sort of thing. And as well as being able to make decisions regarding your health, your safety, and your interactions with people.
Cool. Thank you.
So what's the next nut to crack? You're making a lot of inroads with a lot of people. Where do you feel you've got a wall to knock down still?
I still definitely feel that there is a big gap between, the development and the users. When it comes to software technology, a lot of people aren't, learning properly what a phishing campaign might look like, or, seeing the red flags that we all see when it comes to a scam. Because we are in the industry, we see these things every day. We are trained a little bit better. And I think that more users need to learn that sort of thing. I'd also like to, I'm hoping to start connecting with even more platforms regarding ways that we can just prevent non-consensual imagery and videos from being shared on their sites. Every platform is really, really far behind when it comes to this sort of thing. And with with deep fakes becoming a bigger bit of technology, and with deep nudes, these are things that are going to be bigger problems before we, I feel like a lot of people are going to start stepping up and, taking control of them. So I'd really like to not see that happen. That's kind of the next step. We're still catching up. I mean, it's only been a couple years. And we've accomplished a lot. And at this point, I'm just still learning. I'm still trying to replace my knowledge of how to make a great Long Island, which, by the way, I make the best Long Island.
Okay. We've got
what time can you be here?
Yeah, that's it. We're all getting together now. You've done it now, Katelyn.
Katelyn, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are a group that very much appreciates our cocktails.
All right. My kind of people.
And I just have been thinking about, the groups that would really love to interact with you, but I have a very narrow view from my personal interactions. You have a link out there where somebody says, "Hey, I'd love to have you come talk to us." They can reach out to you, and you can work it out. Or how would somebody say, "Hey, I want to engage with you guys"?
We are on every social media platform. The B.A.D.A.S. Army, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, we are on Reddit, we are everywhere. There's also our website, www.badassarmy.org. And my personal email is Katelyn@badassarmy.org, because we're, very creative that way. They can also reach out to my personal Twitter. That's usually how I recommend if somebody wants to reach me. It's pretty quick. And that is @B.A.D.A.S. Bowden. And they can just shoot me a DM. They're open, so.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, Katelyn, that's badassarmy.org. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was totally just looking at it on Twitter. I just wanted to make sure we mentioned it.
Mm-hmm. Badassarmy.org.
How many people do you have on your team? And if you want to give a couple of shout outs, who else is helping you with this project?
Oh my gosh, we have a great, amazing team of people that are really dedicated to this. Almost all of them have been victims themselves, so there's a lot of empathy and a lot of drive to get some stuff done. Rachel is our COO. She is amazing. There is absolutely no way we could have done half the things we've done if not for her. We also have Kate, who is our legal representative. She also helps us stay professional. She's our token professional. The rest of us are a bunch of messes.
We need one of those people here at Security Weekly. I think we're missing that role somehow.
Where's the token professional when we need him?
That's dangerous.
But we have Kate. I want to give shout outs to everybody on the team. Gosh, Allie, who's been amazing. We have Marley, who's a great marketer. We have Carson, who's been helping us with our security. We have Timmy. Everybody. There's so many people involved with B.A.D.A.S. There are thousands of us, but our core team is really, really great. And we've been getting just shit knocked out.
And now, Katelyn, is it like a not-for-profit or charity? Like, can people donate, or like, how do you fund yourselves? Like, do you work on this full time, or are these people working part time? I'm just curious.
Depends on what their schedule is. I work full time, but it is completely volunteer based. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we don't have any funding. Everything that we receive as far as donations goes directly back into the org. We are trying really hard to grow and do some great things. So as of right now, none of the money that's being donated goes towards payroll and things like that. We all have our own separate forms of income. My Patreon is available on my pinned tweet on Twitter at Badass Bowden, and I believe everybody has that right now. And a lot of us are dedicating a lot of our time, energy, and emotional labor to this. We are hoping to start working and getting some better funding so that we can start having full-time employees and things like that. But as of right now, this is a labor of love.
Fantastic. Good for you.
And do you also do conference presentations? Are you going to any kind of conferences soon?
Oh, yes. I've got a few coming up. I'm going to be at the debut Blue Team Con coming up. I'm really excited about that up in Chicago. And I'm going to be doing a talk about I even came up with a creative name for it. And of course, I'm blanking at the moment. I'm going to be at Blue Team Con with a great speech with a great name, I promise. I'm also planning to be at Layer 8. And that is actually, I'm doing a group presentation with me and Cassie, and we're talking about hunting down creeps on the internet using OSINT. And there's a few more I'm going to be applying for and hopefully getting in. I'm looking at Hacker Halted as well. I am going to be, I'm going to DEF CON, whether you guys want me there or not, but hopefully I'll be speaking. So that'll be cool. And we'll figure it out then.
Katelyn, have you had the pleasure of meeting Micah Hoffman?
That name is It sounds super familiar, but I'm terrible. I'm the worst.
Okay,
we should make an introduction. He'd be willing to
we'll
help
definitely get you two in touch. Micah Hoffman is a good friend of ours, a SANS instructor like myself with the SANS Institute, and he teaches the OSINT class with SANS, and I imagine you guys would have a really good conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like somebody I definitely would love to have a good conversation with.
Yeah.
Anybody else that's doing OSINT, I am always down to talk to and share tips and tricks and all that stuff.
Well, you came to the right place because we know people.
We have such friends.
Yeah, and if you don't meet him, if you don't meet him before layer 8, he'll be there as well, so we can certainly make that connection there.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, I think someone was saying something when she said layer 8, but she is coming. Katelyn, you're coming to layer 8
I
here
will be
in
at
Rhode
layer
Island.
8
on June 6th in Providence, Rhode Island.
June 6th.
Yes.
Which would be a great time for her to come
stage.
early, come to the studio, and turn over our bar to her.
Ooh, that would be fun. I'm warning you though, I do all the fancy stuff.
Do I just need to come to layer 8? Just to
Yes.
come up
Yes,
right
you
out?
do.
Yes.
Come on out, Joff.
Oh,
That's why we do these things, is to make excuses to have our friends to come to Rhode Island. That's really why.
That's the whole reason.
And while you're at Blue Teen Con, see if you can chat with Amanda Berlin.
Yeah, she'd be a good person to talk to you as well.
Amanda would be good. Yeah.
You guys have very similar energy and have similar missions.
I agree.
Hey, I'm always down to meet anyone else that is a badass. So
she fits that criteria. Yeah, for sure. Cool. So, Katelyn, to round out our interview, we have 5 questions. These are the 5 questions with Security Weekly that we ask of all of our guests who come on the show for the first time. Are you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
I suppose so.
3 words to describe yourself.
Excitable, loud, and effervescent.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
I'd probably go with something like a baseball bat. I would definitely see something handheld.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
It would be something creative, just like that speech I can't remember.
And this game is played completely with consent, just putting that out there. In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Why not both? 2 hands.
Wow.
Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise.
You know, I grew up watching Roseanne. So I'm going to go with John Goodman. And I don't know. I don't even know. We'll go. Shit. B.
No
Arthur.
wrong answers.
She's the only one that I can think of that's taller than me.
All right.
Caitlin, thank you so much for appearing on Paul's Security Weekly. With the website was badassarmy.org. Did I get that right?
Yep. Yes.
badassarmy.org.
Fantastic. Caitlin, thank you so much for coming on the show this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. And when I come out to Layer 8, hopefully I'll get to meet you guys in person.
Absolutely looking forward to it. With that, we'll take a short break. Come back with our technical segment for this evening. Stay tuned.